You can set it up. It's easiest to make yourself whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
We're live.
we are live.
Hello.
Hello.
Boys and gals.
This is our new official time until we change it again.
That's right.
All right.
Tuesdays.
Well, it's during football.
Okay.
Tuesdays now. Yeah, until at least February.
Yeah, nobody wants
So
to
you guys
miss
enjoy the
football.
game? Was it everything that
Oh
you
my
were
God,
hoping for?
that game.
I heard a lot of shit talk. I don't know who it was directed towards in terms of players, but I guess it wasn't.
Oh, I can tell you wholeheartedly it was Dak all the way. Just terrible QB. Number 4 is bad. it's not good, man. Cowboys have a lot of work on offense. They need to work
100%.
on. So, how's everybody's week?
It's been going pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing exciting. Just schoolwork, and I met some of my online fellow students, and
Oh, that's always the worst.
yeah, it was weird.
Do you have you been been put into a group project with any of them yet?
Nothing like that. No, thank God. No, it's...
Man,
I don't think we'll be doing that, but
was
like
the
this guy
worst
was
for me.
fucking weird. He's like, "You're in my class, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." Didn't hear from him in like 3 days, and then he's like, "Dude, you're not gonna believe what happened." I'm like, "Well, what?" He's like, these fuckers like came up to me and like beat me up and took me out into the desert and like strangled me with a belt, and it continued to go
This
on
was a
like
classmate of yours.
that. Yeah, online. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
he was just high on meth
Was he-
because eventually he said he was on meth. Because I'm like, I mean, dude, like, shouldn't you go to
Oh,
the
he-
hospital? Like,
he followed that up with,
Yeah, he's
I'm
like, I'm
on
on
meth.
meth. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. But then he was like, I mean, I have the conversation here, but like, he was obsessed with Blumpkins. Like, I don't even know how that came up in the topic. He's like, "Hey, bro, like, are you into Blumpkins?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Wouldn't it be kind of cool, you know, if like you were getting a Blumpkin and I was watching in like the corner?" I'm like, "What? No, man." And it just kept going on like that. But like, you know, he kept like. He'd be like, "Oh, I'm just kidding," you know, how like some people will, like say something gross, like, "Oh, just kidding."
He
like,
was testing the wires to
Yeah, to
see
see
if
how I
you
would
would be
respond.
if you would be okay with, like, hey, maybe we could be Blumpkin buddies, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
but you had to shoot that dream down real quick for him.
Oh, I
so
did that
he
real
didn't.
quick. I'm like, "Man, I'll hear you out, but I'm not about that life." He's like, "Only talk to heterosexuals." I'm like, "Really?" And then he proceeded to send me like pictures of his ass,
What?
his asshole, his nutsack. I'm like, "Dude, don't send me that shit."
No,
you
you
know?
gotta fight it
He's
that
like, "Oh,
way.
sorry, I just got that message." I'm like, I told you like 3 messages ago not to send me that shit.
Well, number one, why would
What
you
the
send
fuck?
that?
You got sexually harassed by,
Yes,
by
actually.
an online classmate?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you plan on turning this kid in?
He dropped from the class.
Oh, okay. That was
I thought
quick.
about it.
Didn't it just start last week? 2
It
weeks
started
ago?
about like 3 weeks ago.
3
Yes,
weeks
yeah,
ago?
yeah. So
Okay.
this was like right before my first exam.
Is there any way that someone can hack that? Like,
I thought maybe it was somebody that I knew
because
fucking
who
with
would
me,
do that?
but I had the feeling I was the only other student to respond to him. I think everyone else ignored him.
So
Just a sneaking suspicion.
So this dude was he was projecting all of his gay tendencies.
Yeah,
and-
exactly. He's
but
like,
he-
"Yeah, wouldn't it be funny, man, if we did this and that?" And then he's like, "Hey, do you live alone? Can I move in?" Like, just all this weird shit.
God damn, that escalated
Yeah.
quickly.
And then he's
What
like
the
sending me
fuck?
pictures of him like smoking weed and blowing like, you know, clouds. Like, "Bro, show me your clouds." I'm like, "I don't even know you, man."
Do you vape, bro? Do you
I
vape?
think my cloud and your cloud are different.
Yeah, we got 2 different clouds going
Bro,
on.
that is
Yeah,
Wow.
it was really gross.
that's one of the most insane things that I've ever heard. Anyway,
Fuck, dude.
Yeah, that was my week.
Send a picture of his asshole.
God.
Oh, there was like 10 of them all in one. And there was one of him being cattle prodded.
Oh my God.
I'm
Yeah, this
sorry.
guy was
Did you
weird.
say cattle prodded?
He had a shirt over his face, and then these 2 dudes were holding his like arms back, and they were fucking shocking him with a prod.
So he was sending you BDSM porn.
yeah, I
That's what
told
he
him
was
that. It's
doing.
like, "Dude, maybe you should go to a BDSM club." He's like, "Well, what's that?" It's like, "Just Google it."
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
But now he found God all at the same time of quitting.
You can't
meth.
find God after that.
This is all
God
like
has-
one conversation. Like we go through all this weird shit, and then it goes back to the blunt.
You're gonna have to answer for that shit when you go up there if you're gonna find God. Hey,
God doesn't
Yeah.
want you at that.
God's not
hey,
into Blumpkins.
you sent pictures of your butthole.
And then he was like, "Dude, I really want the police to taser me." Like, it was getting like just, you know, the guy really just wanted to get hurt.
Jesus.
Good for him.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, I
At
know,
least he
right?
knows
I,
what he
I wasn't
wants.
kink shaming him. I'm just like, man, I'm not into that. You need someone to confide in. That's cool, but like, let's talk about the homework.
You definitely should be gay and be into domestic violence then.
Yeah, I mean, I've always.
If you like being tasered, shit.
Well, when
Oh,
you say
man.
he lived out in the desert, I'm like, okay, that explains a lot.
Oh, yeah.
There's not a lot to do out there except meth
And goats.
and goats.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
now that we've started the show, welcome everybody to the Pirates Podcast.
Lighten the mood.
Oh, is that recorded?
Appreciate everybody stopping by
Yeah.
to enjoy Anthony's little tidbit on his school life.
Yeah, when someone messages me that I don't know, I can only assume the worst.
That's
Yeah, it's
That's
never just like,
amazing.
hey, how you doing?
so. Today's a day of reverence. It's 9/11. So it was a pretty important day. I know we're going off topic to a.
Well, we should maybe
Something
take
a
a
little
moment
more
of silence
serious.
100%.
or something.
Yeah, figure have a little reverence for the ones that are lost in
Over
September
3,000.
11th, 2001. So go ahead and pause.
Should we do it for like 11 seconds?
Okay, well,
Too soon?
You just
I
broke
mean,
the silence.
apparently-
Cool.
apparently that was that. So I mean, I remember 9/11 for me was a very important day in my life because I made one of the biggest decisions of my life. I decided to go into the military at that point because I developed this patriotism in me that
So was that the reason?
I had never experienced before. It was one of the major reasons. I'd always considered going in the military, but I thought that once that happened, that
Yeah, it's kind of like the catalyst.
yeah, I mean things were gonna hit the fan, and I wanted to do my part, I guess. But I remember I was on my way to school. I was in 10th grade, I think, and I was on my way to school, and I remember hearing on the radio that they didn't know what happened. That something hit the tower, but they didn't know that it was a plane at the time. So it was just speculation. And then, and right as I got to school, that's whenever they confirmed the second plane hitting. So then they actually confirmed that it was a plane that hit school or hit the World Trade Center.
Yeah, I saw that video. That was fucking
And,
intense shit. It didn't even look real.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, it was real, but you know what I mean? It was like, that's not something you think you would see, especially caught on camera
yeah,
like that.
it looked like something that was out of a movie for sure. It was surreal, and it had a huge, heavy influence on my life. So I wanted to go around the table and see if everybody remembers where they were at. You know, everybody remembers whenever back in the day, people remember
Yeah.
where they were.
I
when
was in
JFK
math
was
class, so
assassinated.
that's when I saw the aftermath. I woke up, my mom was like, hey, you know, the Twin Towers were attacked, and I didn't know to what extent. I'm just like, oh, whatever, terrorist attack. And then when I get to school, you know, it's all over TV, and like that's when the actual tower was already collapsed. You know, saw all the smoke and shit, and rather than learning math, we're all just kind of sitting there in shock, like, okay, this is actually fucking happening.
Yeah.
Now, most students, of course, you know, they were like ninth graders, so no one really gave a shit, or 10th grade, and I'm just sitting there like, we shouldn't be in class right now for this. This is like pretty fucked up. And I had actually gone to school with one of the people who was on that plane. My condolences to the Frost family. I think they were all on there, so I don't know if there was any survivors after that.
You know, Seth MacFarlane was supposed to be on one of those flights.
Oh shit!
Yeah, he he blames being drunk and still having a hangover.
So he was actually at the airport.
Yeah, well,
He
I
was
don't know
that
if he was at
close?
the airport.
Oh, okay.
I think he bought his ticket, but he ended up not getting on the flight because he was hungover. That's what he said.
Damn.
But think about that for a second. If he was on that plane, shit, would we still have a Family Guy?
No.
Would we have American Dad? Fuck,
I don't
it's
think
crazy.
so.
Well, what about you, Clay? Where were you?
I believe I was about to start biology class, and the one thing I remember is we had a lot of vets in our school that were teachers, and man, just the look on their face was just pure anger when the second plane hit. Of course, that's when we were in school. I think we were not in school when the first one hit, but I mean, just the devastation. You could just see the look, like they wanted to go do something, and that's what really inspired me. Is because that's the American way. Like that, your neighbors, your friend. I mean, we're all family, regardless of what we believe in or whatever. Nobody wants to see Americans hurt, and just the look on their face was like, how did we let this happen? How did this happen? Like, who are we going after? And man, if that doesn't send shockwaves down your spine, I don't know what does. Because anyone in the military, like y'all probably know, it hits you so hard now after y'all been in that, you just won't accept it. Like there has to be repercussions. Like you just don't hurt Americans like that and get away with it. Like,
Well, I mean, you don't hurt anybody like that. I mean, that's.
yeah, but I mean, Americans are selfish. But I mean,
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, but at the same time, but that's our countrymen.
And it was on our soil, so it
Yeah,
was very,
and so that was
a very
a-
big deal.
Yeah.
That was a heartbreaker, and it hurt us really bad. And
It was also a very symbolic attack too on their part. Like, I mean, it was
Exactly.
more than. I mean, I'm not discrediting all the deaths and everything, but
Yeah.
like that was a statement by the terrorists, and like that's. Yeah, I mean, it was.
I mean, they pulled it off,
Yeah.
but that's still like it's like Japan said. They were scared they awoken the giant, and you did because we're not going to accept it no matter what. There's a gun behind every blade of grass, just like they said. We don't give a shit. You will not hurt our countrymen and get away with it. Not going to happen. And I like what George Bush said when he was at Ground Zero is, we hear you. Because, dude, we were all hurting. We all hurt. We still hurt.
I wasn't really hurt that day. I was just more confused.
Well, I hurt when watching people jump off so they didn't get burned alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that in some of
that-
the video. That
man-
was really intensely fucked up.
That-
Again, something you think you'd only see in a movie.
Exactly. And, dude, it hurts me so deep in my soul that to make that decision that you'd rather jump off that building than burn alive, that's fucked up odds.
That takes-
And,
that takes
Damned
courage.
if you do, damned if you don't.
It takes courage. I mean, that's a different form of fight or flight at that point. That's like,
Flight.
yeah, that's huge flight, and it takes a lot of courage to hit that.
Well, I mean, what can anyone really do at that point? I mean, you know your life is over, and so in a panic, I mean, I guess you would have a better odd of jumping off than being incinerated, right? So, I mean,
yeah.
So, Austin, what about you? Where were?
Yeah, I was at high school. I think it was like 7:30 in the morning, and someone told me that one of the planes crashed into the World Trade Center. And my immediate knee-jerk reaction was, what kind of fucking dumbass pilot runs into a giant-ass building?
right?
And that's
Yeah.
what I said originally, and then they're like, how insensitive. I didn't know what was going on. And then when I found out it was a terrorist attack, I was like, wow, well, this is like Pearl Harbor. That's exactly what I remember. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's
And
on that
actually,
level.
you're not too far off base.
yeah, this is Pearl Harbor happening all over again, and we think that we have such a great society and that we're impenetrable by any of these
Right.
these terrible forces. And so I remember when the next one hit, and this was right around the time we were having classes.
Yeah.
I think I was like in a government class, and he didn't even have a curriculum at that point. He just literally just rolled the TV in.
Yeah.
And
Eyes glued, just waiting.
Or actually, I think we already had TV in the corner. I don't remember. But all I remember him doing is pointing at us, going, "This is history." And I remember thinking to myself, "What a cop out!" like, do your fucking plan. Still, I mean, you know what I mean? Like everyone stopped at the moment,
Yeah.
but there was no sense of normalcy at that point. And
Always
that's when
a
I was
cynic, even in high school.
Oh yeah.
It's almost
I mean,
like
how-
you have to
how
have it
could you
written in
expect-
stone before you believe it.
Look, I mean, just the way that my mind works, it's just I always tend to see things flip flopped, and I'm not trying to make light of the situation whatsoever.
No, but sometimes it takes a moment for it to actually like connect. Like
Yeah.
you see this happening,
Yeah.
and I mean because it's so, it's on TV. It's not in front of you.
Well, not only that, in America, we're not used to this.
Oh, not at all. No,
This
no,
ain't
we're-
like it's Iraq or anything like that where you just hear gunshots. This is where, like, if you hear
Yeah, it was
gunshots,
the
you think,
unthinkable.
hey, maybe it's a cop shooting at somebody. Then your brain has to process, hey, we're in America. This usually doesn't happen.
Well, the thing is that they had attempted a something similar whenever they put a truck underneath the World Trade Center. They tried to blow it up from the bottom, but it failed. So they attempted it way before, and it was years before. But a lot of people forgot about that. Just like the threats that happen and so much time goes in between that you don't
Yeah, we
you don't
forget.
realize how vulnerable it is, and whenever it happens, it can happen like that, and it can take out many
Exactly. So
people.
you've been overseas to where it's all hostile environment.
Right.
So you just expect hostile shit.
Right.
But you don't over here. So whenever you hear gunshots, you're like,
Well, yeah, America has its violence, but
So-
not to that degree.
yeah,
That
something's
was
going on,
unprecedented.
like-
Unless you're in Chicago.
so like if you hear mortar fire over there, you're not going to flinch after, what, a couple months being there, maybe a month. But over here, you hear mortar fire, you're going to be like it's going to take you a long time to process that. Like, what
Right.
the hell's going on?
Well,
Because
definitely.
we're not used to that. We're
No.
first world country. We don't live that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's privilege. We definitely.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely goes with the idea of you're only aware of what you know around you.
Exactly.
And I think, Stu, this is a perfect way to kick
Oh,
this
yeah,
off.
nice segue.
Yeah.
I
like
that
that.
segue.
Oh, perfect segue.
Hell yeah.
Also, if anybody, I know there's we have listeners watching. Nobody's really participating right now, but if you let us know where you were whenever September 11th happened, we would love to hear your thoughts and how it affected you. But we're gonna carry on. What I wanted to talk about tonight was I wanted to dip into the Allegory of the Cave, and I wanted to steer that into some of the things that I've been researching on. So before I kick it off, is anybody familiar with the Allegory of the Cave? Is everybody familiar with it?
I have no idea what it is.
Actually, yes, I am. So, well, I don't want to spoil too much, but yeah, basically, it's these people in a cave. They're chained to the wall. They can only see the wall, and the idea is that this is all that they have ever known. So they have a fire behind them, and everything that they see as their reality is casted in shadows.
Right, exactly. So Plato's Allegory of the Cave. It's a very it's a, I guess you could say, like a microscope into human society and the way that we live. So the synopsis of the Allegory of the Cave is there are three prisoners. They are chained up. They have a fire behind them, and they have shadows from the outside world in this cave, and they also have the sunlight behind them that casts shadows onto the wall. So this fire casts their shadows, and the light behind them casts the world outside shadows, whether it be buggies or carts that come by. And so they're looking at this wall, and the only thing that they see is these shadows on the wall, and that's their entire universe. That is their entire world, is these shadows on
That's
the
their
wall.
reality.
That's the only thing that they can perceive. That's the only thing that their reality is. Exactly.
So these shadows, they are made by what?
The fire.
The fire.
Well, the fire
Yeah, and
casts
there would
for-
be people walking by too, and so they'd see the shadows of animals and things
So they're
like
basically
that.
just making their own understanding of the world around them.
Yeah, based
with
on the
shadows.
world, yeah, that they live in. This is all that they know.
Do they not think what that shadow's on?
Well, they
Well,
still,
well, exactly. That the only thing they have is that perception of reality. That
So
wall.
they didn't think,
So
oh, it's a cave or it's a wall,
right
or something.
They did the only thing. It's like being shackled. So the only
So
the
they're
only thing
only
that you
awareness.
have-
yeah, presumably, like you'd say that they lived there their whole life. They've always been there.
So that was just their
So,
natural environment.
Yeah, like they wouldn't even say that it was a cave. That's just, this is their world. This is how they see it. They see the shadow of a cat. Oh, it's still a cat, but that's what you think a cat looks like is definitely not the cat that they're seeing.
So I got a question.
Interesting.
So were they chained to the wall, facing the wall, or chained
Yeah,
to the
they were.
wall? Okay. So something had to walk in between the fire and them to cast a shadow. Otherwise, it's going to project it the other way.
Right. So the things, yes, coming from the.
Yeah, there's actually a
the-
picture of it. It's very elaborately set up, so it's pretty much like a thought experiment. So like the hows and whys really aren't important. It's just kind of what it represents.
But my thing is like most animals are not going to come close to a fire because that's usually why you start a fire.
Right.
So if it's walking closer, it's going to project a bigger picture of what the animal is because it's a shadow.
Exactly. So it
Okay.
They're
casts-
also
it-
chained up, Clay. It's
Yeah.
not like they're making
Yeah, but
hand
their
puppets, like,
perception
going,
is a
"Wow,
sk-
wow."
No.
The
no,
perception
they're
is
chained
skewed,
up.
though.
They're chained up, but animals typically don't come close to fire because that means man.
So carrying on with the synopsis, we'll get into breaking it down after I'm done with it. So what happens is one of the prisoners gets free. One of the three prisoners gets free, and they start exploring the world around them. and they had noticed the fire, and then they noticed the whole entrance to the cave, and then they walk out of the cave. The sun, they see the sun for the first time. It's blinding them.
Well, the one,
right,
because he goes back.
Right,
and,
the one person. It's blinding them, the person. So they have this new perception of reality now. Everything that they have ever known is it's completely tarnished. So their perception of everything is wrong, and they find this new reality. So he sees this new reality, and he wants the other prisoners to be free also. He doesn't want them to be just secluded to this one environment. And so he goes back and he tries to free the other two. And one of them or both of them they're reluctant. They don't want to because
well, yeah, they don't believe him.
Right, they don't believe that for one that something like that exists. Because that's all they've ever known, and so they don't want to leave their perceived reality, and so that's basically it. That is the whole thing. Is that
also this is kind of important too. So when the guy re-entered the cave, because he was exposed to the light. He was unable to see the original way that he did back in the cave. Right. So his perception was metaphorically completely changed.
Completely altered.
You could say that he was enlightened, or he basically ascended.
And that is the idea that and that's the philosophy. It's not a proven thing of whether or not this was, because Plato spoke.
Yeah, it's an allegory, so it's metaphor.
Spoke in riddles and metaphors and everything like that. But the idea behind it it's amazing if you think about it, because there are a lot of people that have experienced that social engineering, that construction of being focused on one thing, and that's all they're ever taught in the world is this one thing.
Yeah, they're rooted in that one way.
That one way of life. And then when something else is open to them, they automatically they're dumbfounded, and a lot of people will push back towards the idea of free thinking, open thought. A lot of people, the way that they look at the news nowadays, that's the only way that they get their news sources is from accredited media sources.
Yeah, the living room is the cave, and the TV is the fire.
Right.
And what you see on the screen are the shadows.
And that's the metaphor, and that's a beautiful metaphor that I think that a lot of people can understand if they really look at it.
So let me know when we're breaking this down, because I have a lot of questions.
Okay, so the reason why he did this was a part of it, because you can actually apply this to a lot of different things, but one of them was that he was making a point about society and how people learn. And so you have that camp of people who aren't afraid to go out and question what they believe, what they see, what they think they know, and then you have the other camp of people who are they're dead set in the way that they are. It could be that it's too painful for them. Yeah, they're complacent, but to really see things clearly, it would completely, obstruct their way of living, and it's not a good thing for some people.
That's like what a lot of people
kind of like a mindset, if you will.
It is, absolutely.
Like people that think of something, whether they have a perception or whether they have an idea about it. And if anyone listens to the show, we harp about this all the time. I think Plato wrote this, first and foremost, for those of you who don't know, Plato was a philosopher, and he was a writer as well. If you've ever heard the name Socrates,
that
it's
was his
still
mentor.
up to debate whether Socrates was a real person or
Right.
not, because of how he wrote and how things were. So just
And
to break
Plato
it
made
down,
up
Plato kind of wrote him
many-
as like a character
he
in this kind
wrote
of...
up many characters.
So just think of a philosophical schizophrenic that just created all these different characters that said pretty much the same stuff.
So I'm going to be like a listener right now, not knowing anything.
Okay.
So did this ever take place anywhere in the earth, like in history?
It's metaphorical.
Yeah, it didn't actually physically happen, but...
It could have. Just like the island of Atlantis could have, fallen into the sea.
Okay.
He was a philosopher, and he got his ideas off of many different things. So this could have been something that he got inspiration from, seeing this type of thing happen. But the message to take away from it is the metaphor itself. Is people having these dreams, these aspirations of something else that's out there. You ever heard like this idea that I'm not meant to be here, or I should be doing something else. I shouldn't have to just do this, this, and that for daily routine. We all feel this way. Those that don't like their job, feel like they're indebted to a credit, basically, that we're credit of America.
Hell, even a relationship. Like if you're in a
Right.
bad relationship, getting out of that, like think of like a woman who's being abused all the time. And again, maybe she was abused her
Or a
whole
man.
entire life. Sure, or a man,
man,
sure.
yeah.
But if you think about that, that's her cave.
Yeah,
That's the
it's all
only thing
they
she
know.
knows. She's shackled. So she doesn't have an idea or an ability to get out of that because she believes that's her natural environment,
Right.
her reality.
Okay, so I don't know if I need to ask this question yet. I don't know if we're
Oh,
into
shoot. Go ahead.
dwelling into it this hardcore, but how come like most animals do the same thing as we do? Like we have certain protocols to do certain things, right?
Sure.
How come ants do not have any falling out like we do in human society?
I think that's
Falling out, what
I
do you
think
mean?
that's also going to get into my next point. Is
That's why I was asking if it was too soon
well, it's the idea
to
of
bring that up.
intelligence. There's an intelligence gap. We have this ability to communicate and develop sentience beyond what an animal is able to comprehend currently.
And we can
maybe-
analyze our reality objectively. As far as we know, animals can't be objective. They
When
just
I'm going to
react.
use that against you in your next segment.
Okay. I mean, do you want to use it
No,
against me now?
the simulator.
Okay, so
simulation. you
all
mean.
right, so this
So this kind of does, it supports a simulation theory.
right.
Not
But-
feeling an emotion.
but, I mean, I'm not talking-
intelligence.
Well, all this. I mean, so the cave thing is about perspective. So like there was this story back in the day where some people believed that Native Americans didn't see the settlers coming, and the reason being is because they never saw what a ship was.
Well,
And
that's
so,
why I'm.
So the theory goes is they actually couldn't see it because they couldn't comprehend it. 'Cause
I'm
they-
gonna call bullshit.
That's
on
what-
that
that's what I
real
say.
Well,
saying-
right.
I'm gonna
be
call
like
it
that
is, but
bullshit
well, that's why I said
real
it's
fast.
a story. But the idea though is, again, it's perception. So you live in that cave. Cave is the world around you, and so the shadows, what's casted, that's what's put in front of
Well,
you.
I'll give you a great example. Dogs can't see their leashes. They don't know that there's a leash around them.
Right, but there is one there,
But there
though,
is
yeah.
one there.
They-
And
they
so that's
actually
the reason.
do.
Go ahead.
Okay. So whenever you're walking your dog, if you have an aggressive dog and you tighten that leash, he automatically gets tense because he thinks something's wrong.
Does he see it?
Well, he feels it.
But he knows it's there.
Because he feels it.
Well, why don't he just run off?
Well, they try.
Oh, they
Some
try
of them do.
to. They run around.
They just can't make that connection.
But once you yank back one time, he knows it's there.
Okay.
Well, that's learning.
Following what you're talking about, it's how a dog sees something is a lot different than how we see stuff. And that has a lot to do. We used to think that it was a
Well,
black
yeah,
and
he did-
white.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no,
No,
that
it's
ties
okay.
into what I mean. Yeah, so our senses aren't perfect, and that falls all into the whole cave thing. So like, yeah, the dog can feel it. The dog can eventually make that connection that if I move this direction, this is going to happen. But again, because it can't see it, it makes its perception imperfect.
Well, and dogs don't have to worry about things we have to worry about. That's why our brains are so complex. They don't have to worry about paying bills. They don't have to worry about going to work. Their work is at
Sure.
home. And so they actually have more
Yeah,
senses than we do.
Well, they don't share the same simulation that we live in.
Well, it's not really a simulation.
Well, hear me out though. So, like, I think people when they hear the word simulation, they immediately think like virtual reality or something digital or like even illusionary. But like, I hear a lot of talk lately about how, people like in my film class, we were at a young age programmed to watch movies a certain way. Operating word is programmed. So what if simulation isn't literally, something that's pulled over our eyes, but rather a mode of like the way that we live? That's the simulation. So like the way America is now, you could say that is a simulation in the sense that we are programmed to live our lives that way. Our expectations and our motivations are all pretty much dictated by these rules or the simulation that's been made to basically exert control over the whole of civilization. So
But I
different.
don't think that's really a simulation. I think that's more
Well, you're taking it
brainwash.
to. Well, yeah, you're right, but people take it too literally because like the Buddhists believe that if life's an illusion, right, that's the closest thing to what you'd call nowadays a simulation. But even though you can see clearly, you can see that everything's laid out on the table. But with the right programming, what you look at here could be fundamentally different. You understand what I'm saying?
What about emotions? How would
Yeah,
you?
that's all part of it. So I mean, your emotions, your all your senses, this all plays
how
a
would
part
you-
into perception.
So let's
how would you simulate that, though?
let's dial back and let's get the simulation theory out there of what it is. There are a lot of top quantum physicists right now, theoretical physicists that are buying into this idea, this simulation theory, and this simulation theory is that something, whether it's could be extraterrestrial, could be something beyond our thought process right now, has designed this entirety. And this doesn't throw out creationism, because the idea of simulation also falls into creationism. If you look at God and the concept of an omnipotence, of
Yeah, there would have to be like an architect,
being
or
able,
a creator to make
being
that
able to
simulation.
have that divine intervention, everything like that. It doesn't throw that out. But the idea is that there are many factors that, and the math adds up in these physics, that in this simulation theory than it has before in the idea of string theory, which couldn't the Big Bang theory, which was the math that failed in that was that the fuel that created way too much fuel with the bang itself instead of expending all that fuel. So that idea in itself, that's why they're really clinging to this idea of a simulation theory. And there are factors that fall into this, like Einstein's causation loop, the idea that anything that has ever happened in our lives will affect our future. Anything that happens in our future will affect our past. So anything that happened 40 years from now affected you whenever you were a baby.
So it's almost more simultaneous rather than like a linear progression.
Right, the idea that time is relative in itself, and that anything, it's the idea
So a whole
that
chain of events have already
anything
happened.
that could happen, has happened, will happen, is
And
happening.
is happening, yeah.
Exactly.
So do you think these creators, if you will, these creators of our civilization, or could we even dare say the universe, if they did this, do you think there's a program that they would use? And if so, did they leave that program within all of us, as far as that we'd be able to program ourselves?
DNA.
That's a beautiful thought also, because the idea is that it's an 8-dimensional type of being, because we live right now, we have a 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional sense, and in some essence we understand 4-dimensional and 8-dimensional as far as the theory.
We understand
it's not
concepts
tangible.
like pictures, for example. If you look at a picture, if you really want to just start putting them into grids and start looking at all these little colors and individual kind of palettes that it uses, you start noticing a blend of these different colors that make up this idea. And we're just talking about a microscopic point of color. So if you start thinking about that, where are our thoughts? And if you can actually see your thoughts, could that just be another form of pixelation that we're using?
And that plays into another part as well, as the idea of pixelization, because the idea of pixelization, like you have on these monitors and everything like that, in our simulated environment, anything that we simulate, program, or anything like that, you have these pixels, and those are the clear images that we get after you put them all together and they develop something. So the idea of an atom is our pixel in this program, because whenever you try and break down an atom, you can't. What happens whenever you break down the atom?
Bad things
Yeah.
happen.
Fucking boom.
Well, what about neutrons and electrons? Like, if you want to break it down,
Right.
Well, now
what
you're,
would those be?
well, now you're talking about chemistry.
Those are
You're
also-
talking about how they all kind of work together.
Those
to
are
make
also
matter.
the building blocks. So you're talking, the atom is the smallest thing, right? And then that builds on top of everything to make molecules, which
Yeah, those
goes
are-
into the electrons and neutrons aspect of
So,
chemistry.
why would you allow free thinking if you're in a
Oh,
simulator?
you've arrived.
If you're trying to figure out one thing or another, why would you allow free
Well,
thinking?
that gets in the argument though if you really do believe in like true independent thought.
Yeah, I mean, there's no
does-
answer to any of this, but my thing is like, why would you allow free thinking if you're just trying?
What would be the purpose of the simulation?
Yeah, exactly. Why wouldn't you manipulate it any way you wanted to see? Like, okay, we lab test rats.
Yeah.
So we're gonna manipulate them. Fuck you. Love you, dude.
Well, one of the explanations would be that our society has already achieved its like height of technology, and that we've all been uploaded, and we're just living life as it was before whatever the event was that forced us to
but we
upload
came up with
ourselves.
Space Force.
I'm gonna remind you of a story
I know,
of
I'm
a
looking
guy.
forward to that.
There's a guy who used this idea of programming, if you will, because he really wanted to be a fish. Deep down, I guess being a human being was just not enough for
being
him.
a fish would be kind of cool.
Sure, okay. So he really decided to be a fish. So what does he do? He goes and he makes his own fish costume,
Okay.
and he gets into his fish costume. He drives up to the lake.
5,000 Way to Die. or
Does he
something
drown?
like that.
Yes, he does. Because he wanted to be a fish. And as being that fish, the one thing he forgot to do when he put himself in his little fish suit, he forgot to give himself breathing holes and gills. And guess what?
And an oxygen
You're
tank.
a fucking human being. You're not a fish. You try to be a fish while you're a human, you die.
He did not.
I know. I mean, maybe
he did
he
not
didn't-
hit that simulation.
Maybe
on
he
the
wasn't
right.
feeling it like appropriately. I mean, if he really believed he was a fish, maybe it would have saved his life.
Maybe.
Maybe.
So,
We shouldn't assume
we
the
have
species.
a special guest, Michael.
Hello, Michael.
Hello.
I'm Tony. Good to
I'm
meet
Mike.
you.
Nice to meet you.
Just came to crash the show, did you? I think you were invited by somebody.
Yeah, he was.
Maybe.
So
How's it going?
we're talking about the idea of simulation theory. You ever?
No.
You have never?
No.
Never delved into that.
No, I didn't.
All right.
No deals.
The simulation theory is so Elon Musk really believes this, and he talks about like, so if we have a computer game like called The Sims,
Okay.
essentially there's another form of life, a higher intelligence, whether we know it to have corporeal form or not, but a type of intelligence that would pretty much make us, and we're just some
So we could be just digital actors in something
yeah,
else's
we're just
simulation.
You're just a little simulation in some little shitty kids, whatever
Yeah.
from like alien
Some
race
little- some little
in a
easiest
basement.
Some
comparison
little
would be
sim-
like the Matrix.
Well, that's that some little 8-dimensional shitty being that it's like a kid on an anthill that's like with a magnifying
Right.
glass and just cooking the ants, and like anytime you feel like really shitty about yourself, just think that maybe you were just programmed to have terrible life.
Well, the idea is that because of all these natural disasters that occur, when you start seeing all this destruction, that's the idea that there is some type of weird simulation thing going on. Neil deGrasse Tyson talked about that.
It's a kind of like a natural algorithm. So everything
Pretty
happens
much.
in a
Right.
predictable pattern over
Right,
time.
which is why I wanted to get back to thought. And when people think, so again, if you go back to this whole idea, we talked about chemistry being the building blocks of matter, and
Sure.
chemistry maybe perhaps being the building blocks as the programming for the simulation. But the one thing it doesn't answer, which Clay was talking about, was when someone has a thought and what thoughts really are. And when we started getting into thoughts, we talked about pixelation as far as when it's vivid and you can actually see colors and you can see
Right.
ideas and people in there. That would be an idea of a pixelation that's occurring.
So
But the
everything
weird-
is represented in a chemical pixelation, is what you're getting at.
Let's see here. Well, I'm gonna need my player to step his fucking game up. What are you talking about, Troy?
He's talking about his simulation.
His avatar.
Oh,
He's
Simulation
talking-
experience
He's
isn't
talking
the
about
best.
his creator that's running his simulation.
now
So
that's
you need to
now
step
that's
it
the
up.
next question is, and this is where we start talking about God or gods or anything like that. If this theory is possible, if the theory about this universe being a simulation and that we're all just in these little compartmentalizations from some shitty
Right.
snot-nosed alien kid,
Truman effect.
could there not
Yeah.
be more? Could there not be more people just playing this game called life?
Well, what
but
if-
it's not
Right.
us. We're the characters.
Well,
we're
what
the
if there's
This
avatars.
could
like-
just be one game
What
of many.
if the universe is infinite, right? So that you would have like all these mini creators having their own infinicy.
Right. Well, that go
they're-
back to that
they're
parallel
dealing
universes.
with,
Well, it'd be like my God can beat your God up.
right?
Isn't this kind of what happened on Men in Black?
Kind of, yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah, the bag of marbles.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens when you start thinking real deep as far as what we could be. And
Yeah.
again, this is all speculation.
Well, the thing is on top of it being speculation, there's a lot of things that factor into it that give the theory some life. Like the idea of the golden ratio, for one,
Yeah.
is one of the big things that everything is made up, and that it all factors into that one ratio.
Plants, some animal.
The
It's a
galaxies.
naturally occurring pattern in almost everything that
Exactly.
Right.
On top of that, the pixelations of atoms developing our world,
Mm-hmm.
developing 2D to 3D to 8D to 4D or
you see. That,
4D
and
to
if the
8D.
universe is binary or if math
Well,
is a
let's
universal
go.
language.
Let's go to that idea, that binary idea, because it's interesting that we have males and females across the board. It's not just human beings.
Not anymore.
Well,
Let's not get into that. Let's just
We
stay
used
focused.
to.
Gender is fluid.
Gender's not sex, though, so we don't need to worry about gender. This is just, the 1 and the 0.
Right,
Like, we
right.
don't need to worry about anything else.
Well, that's why I started thinking as far as like our thoughts. Now, this is going to sound pretty strange, but I've looked at thought pattern, and I've looked at ideas. It almost to me seems like Morse code. Like if you're using Morse code in this way, what is it? It's a 1 or a 0, right? Dot, 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 or in
Yeah,
a
okay,
space.
yeah.
Well, think about that with the frequency of how much you have thoughts and what those thoughts are, positive or negative. Now, again, I'm not saying everybody should just always just rotate these. Everyone should always have positive thoughts all the fucking time, because I think there is a destructive aspect that is part of the creation process as well. So again, it's start monitoring your thoughts as far as was that positive, was that positive, was that negative, was that negative, and then kind of just start looking at the pattern of how things are going.
But do you do that?
Yeah, all the
No,
time.
No, you don't.
I do, yeah.
No.
I actually have a calendar.
You don't care. No.
Well, see-
Not Austin. No way.
Ivan brings up a
that's
good
one way of
point
looking
that
at it.
this theory also somewhat helps explain the Mandela effect.
That's a
true.
great point.
The idea of deja vu could be a
glitch.
glitch, just like in the Matrix. The idea that they were living in that simulation. I mean, we don't have an explanation for deja vu. We have a theory, and so yeah.
That's why this sucks, because there's no closure.
Yeah.
I mean,
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, it could
there's
really
no
be
closure. We don't know.
Well,
we
when you die, you'll know.
Well,
Maybe.
So should we
Maybe.
just
Maybe.
should
If
we,
you're lucky.
That's better than nothing.
should we just maintain that idea that we just don't know or we can't know? I'm not about that. I'm not
Well, I
about.
mean, you can
Well,
you
you could
can think
deconstruct
about
it,
what we're talking
but-
about now, but there's no science to back it up.
Yet.
Well, it's also the idea of
I
the way
mean-
that technology works is the idea of perceiving anything, you can achieve it. They've said that ever since you were kid and stuff, and eventually that is going to be the case.
Just do it.
It does take some time. Yeah, just do it. So it does take some time to get there, but eventually technology will be anywhere you want it to be, and eventually you're going to be controlling things with your mind. I mean, it's years, thousands of
So-
years
I
down
don't think
the road.
it's out of the
maybe.
realm of possibility.
If we go with that, what if we get so complex that we let bacteria have its own mind and grow whatever it wants to?
Well, it does already.
Yeah.
No.
No,
Yeah,
but we don't
in
let
your
it have
gut.
its own mind.
In your gut.
Well, we control it. Well, we try to control it as best we can, but I mean, the bacteria is going to outlive us the way that it always has.
Yeah, but
So,
it has a certain function. That's how
Well, I
we're
mean, you
able
could
to
say
figure it out.
everything does.
everything has a certain function. That's the
Even
idea.
at one point, humanity had a
But
purpose,
then,
a place.
then it's not
in
a
nature.
simulation.
That's the idea that a simulation works, because anything that can happen will happen, and it's the programming. The programming is so perfect, just like the way that people talk about God's creation. God's creation is perfect because He doesn't make mistakes. Well, that's the idea that the program is.
Or did we alter it?
Well, yes, kind of. Well, I mean, look at it like this. So reality is made up of a system of other systems. So if you take Skyrim, it's an open world game. It's made up of all these different systems dictating certain behaviors. It's all very clockwork. Everything is interconnected, and if one system's out of whack, it affects the other. So if you look at reality as more of a system or like a series of processes that create the experience, you can break it down that way, and you can change it. We have changed it. We started from being hunter-gatherers to,
Vegans?
not vegans, but like agricultural
Eventual.
society. I mean, we've separated ourselves and rewrote the code, if you will, to live in a different manner. So when people talk about simulation theory, I don't think it's quite on the nose like that. Again, it's like, we started living in nature and then we changed the code and now we live in what we know as society now. And, we have perceptions that are based basically on just how the way things are. So, if you live in America, there's certain expectations that are there that, we take for granted. You just assume, again, it goes back with the cave. It's like, this is what you know. This is all you know. Anything else contrary to it will corrupt that perception, and like it'll either cause you a lot of anguish, or you'll resist, or you might go that vulnerable place and really see things for how they are.
Except for a non-living nature. So, okay, we had, let's say, dinosaurs, and we had an asteroid hit. Mm-hmm. You had the ice age. That was a non-living being that changed the course of the world.
So the idea is...
Well, that's still a system, though. You have weather. And then you have all that shit floating around in space.
But
it's just a much larger system.
Not in outer space. There's no weather.
Well, no. What I'm saying is everything that happens or occurs in nature is based on a system. Like, you can't have something just happen.
But other than that, humans have altered everything. Other than a non-human being, it's always been other than a living being. A non-living being has changed the course of this earth.
I like to look at it as, in my opinion, I like to look at it as it's like a survival game. You're given all the tools.
A battle royale.
You just don't know how to use them. There's no instructions.
You just haven't created everything yet. So eventually, all the tools are there. Everything is at our disposal as far as what we can combine in order to make certain things. So eventually, we're gonna have everything developed in the idea.
Well, and like he said, weather. Well, that only happens in our stratosphere, within our stratosphere.
Think about the idea
it's
of
a
virtual
system.
reality.
That was an example.
So what do you
when
call...
we start creating virtual reality, as far as we're already doing it now, we have programs to where you can make a simulation of something like a city that you want to be in, and you can start saying, well, what about the weather if it's going to be really shitty today? There's programs that they're actually using that for fire and rescue services and police officers. And what they're using is they're coordinating all their abilities and how to be the most effective in these simulations.
But do they have a asteroid hitting the Earth on that simulation?
They can, yeah.
I think anything.
Can they, or do they?
Yeah, I'm sure they do. I don't know that.
Like,
that
remember
specific.
you said the
Wait, I think
Sims.
Mike
Like, didn't
wants
you
to
say the
speak.
Sims, or was I just thinking that?
You're probably just thinking that.
Okay, so the Sims, we only do things in our stratosphere, like weather, whatever fires,
whatever the
tornadoes.
environment has been programmed to be limited.
Yeah,
to.
but there's no asteroids, there's no Big Bang Theory, there's none
Not
of
yet.
that.
Not yet. You just gave them that idea. Now you're going to see the next evolution of Sims.
But
What are you gonna say, Mike?
I think regardless of in any situation, any system, or anything like that, if it's not adaptable, it will never survive.
Everything's
Ooh,
adaptable.
Interesting.
Because
No,
you,
everything has to be adaptable.
Yeah.
because you got bacteria.
But a bacteria will
even
adapt to
bacteria
any
has to be
environment.
adapt, yeah.
Not all bacteria will survive.
Well, like on the moon, they just discovered there was water on the moon. I mean,
Right.
so that means there was living things there, but no longer. But there was water there.
And we don't know what living things that was. We don't know what it breathed.
But where there's
ate.
water, you got H2O, and you
Sure.
got bacteria. Because if it sits long enough, you got atmosphere.
Right, but there's also other bacteria that they found that thrive not just through water, but through like
Pathogens?
acid. And,
We'll also
and-
consider like you said, the pathogen stuff that stuff that could be in it, but you may not survive. Like, I'm not going to go drink the water out of Lake Louisville. However, once it's been filtered, I'm able to live through it.
Well, think about it in sewer water.
Right.
It's like in oxygen, number one, but there's pathogens. There's living beings that can live with limited oxygen.
Right.
So there is living life everywhere.
Everywhere.
But I don't know how that would be a simulation, because that's just. I mean, when you talk about simulation, I think of like that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, or
Total Recall.
yeah, Total Recall.
Well, that's what I mentioned earlier. So again, if you don't look at it in the conventional sense of the word as simulation, but think of like what makes a simulation. So again, you have a series of processes that create. So like the weather is one layer, all that bacteria is another layer, but they all work together in some way to create what you know as that reality, and that can be altered. It's not like actually any. Sorry, did I say something funny?
No. I caught him having a bro moment.
We're broing out over
Okay.
here. We got caught.
Like,
Fuck.
I mean, it would. It's just a representation. So, like, forget the whole Total Recall thing. So, like, in your day-to-day life, you could say that is the simulation of clay.
Well,
No one else can really have that experience because we're not clay. However, we're all still, we still are able. I mean, we're all affected by what makes up those systems. So again, weather, going out. I mean, just engaging with the public. You look at how the planet works, like plate tectonic. Everything is layered, and there's a function and a purpose. And if it doesn't adapt, or if it doesn't have a place, then it gets deleted. I guess you could
Well,
say.
when I hear simulation, I think there's a higher being of they're
And that
trying to
could be-
gather
and that's
intel.
one way of looking at it. I mean,
But why would they let someone free thinking?
well, it could also be an experiment. So, we have thought experiments where those are just questions that people can ask and you play around with. This could very well just be a kind of simulation to see how things play out.
But how do you feel during simulation? Like, how do you have empathy? How do you have?
Well, that could all be a factor. That could all be part of the systems.
But you still have to have a mind that can process that.
I mean could that not also go into programming? We like with our simulated The Sims, they have feelings, they have certain things like their anger.
Not
sad.
robots.
Well, they have representations of these things. So, yeah, your Sims can
Yeah.
get hungry, sad. They
But that's us controlling robots.
That's
I
like
mean,
those
Well,
goddamn
right, but
Tamagotchis.
it all represents something, though. Like, think of them as values or actors, characters. Same thing in your day-to-day life,
But you can't have a robot have empathy towards another robot getting killed.
Well, you can
Yet.
program it to.
Yet.
Not yet. I mean, eventually.
Yeah,
there's-
that's the realm of
sky's
AI.
the limit, dude. If so far what has happened is if you can perceive it, you can achieve it, and that
But-
we've
I like that. Yeah, if
we've
you can
shown
perceive
that-
it, you
I
can
beg to
achieve
differ.
we've
it.
shown that as a species that we're capable of creating these things from nothing.
You can only program it the way you feel. You can't program it the way everybody feels.
No, that's an interesting point.
That's interesting.
and
Well,
that
hold on.
gets
What do you mean
into-
by that?
but
Because
but
you
this
tell-
is
okay,
a
so
collective
you wouldn't
consciousness.
have liberals and conservatives.
Okay.
You can like if I'm conservative and I make a robot, he's
Sure.
obviously going to be conservative. I can't make him think liberal thoughts.
I like that. Obviously, he's going to be a conservative robot.
So I can't. So you would have to have multiple teams, and then they're going to conflict. So you cannot program a robot to feel empathy to one side and the other at the same time. There's no way.
What I disagree. In my opinion, I disagree with you. I think that you wholeheartedly can program in that way, and we're showing it with the capability of we have with AI right now. We do have the capability
Like Google?
of having them make their own decisions.
you mean Google's
CNN?
Nazi AI robot?
They're able to make their own decision, and I believe wholeheartedly that eventually they will have that sentience.
But
That's
they're
gonna
gonna-
be
but they're
that's
gonna
gonna be
conflict.
tough. And that's gonna
Well,
be tough
that-
whenever in the simulation we are simulating more, and we're giving our own simulation sentience, and then that's gonna be a whole like Inception type of
So you're the IT guy.
situation. Yeah.
So okay, so if let's say I do a math problem and it's supposed to be positive, but someone else thinks it should be negative. You don't think that computer program's going to sit there and just lag out and be like,
It all-
"What the hell am I
it all
supposed to
depends.
do?"
Honestly,
if-
something that sophisticated would figure that shit out.
if-
Well, we're talking about a damn
But
simulator.
it also
Like, what the
depends on
fuck?
how that programming went. If you program that to have its own ideas
Yeah,
and
talking
to
variables.
and to yeah, and to
But you can't.
and to not be completely
you
accurate,
have
you
to.
can.
You're programming it.
Yes.
You're programming your ideas into that machine.
Yes, and the way that programming works,
It's not
is
going to
that
think by itself.
You can give it suggestions, and you can give it many
Like
different
Google?
suggestions.
Well, no, again, so it goes back to
Facebook.
algorithms.
I feel like you're not having an open mind about this. Like I'm giving credence to something that is possible. You're saying it's not possible at all.
I
It's
think
not.
it could be possible.
well,
Yeah.
maybe the perfected method of it isn't created yet. But
But it's going to
it is-
have conflicted ideas.
well, no. If we're
It could-
talking
it
about
could have.
behaviors, you can program behaviors, and then you can program something
To
to
the way
evaluate.
you-
though,
to the
I
way
mean, it
you
really
think
just.
it.
Well, it could be any way anyone thinks. I
Yeah.
mean, but it's not going. No one's going to model it after one person. What they're
So-
going to do is they're going to take algorithms. It's going to compile all this data, and the idea is that the AI is going to do this all on its own. So it'll have the tools, like you mentioned before. It'll have everything at its disposal, but that part of what makes it able to think on its own, I mean, I can't explain that, but that's really kind of spawned out of just a huge fucking collection of data.
It also
I
it,
can't-
it goes with the
Algorithms
idea
and-
of the simulation theory.
Yeah.
Why can we have all these free thoughts? Why do we have all this
emotions.
political emotions and
Yeah,
stuff
that's
like
part of
that.
it.
That if you look at the simulation, it's the programming itself has been programmed in that way.
Well, I got a rebuttal for both of y'all.
Okay.
Okay.
So, if you program into this robot certain words and their definition to the T, so you can take, like, let's say Maxine.
What 2 words are they? Let's write them down. What 2 words?
Not 2 words, but let's say
What are the words?
Maxine Waters and then Trump.
Okay.
Sure.
Mix
Okay.
them together and
Okay.
tell me which one's. How's it going to depict which one's right?
Okay, so
Well, what do you mean?
used-
What's the context here?
Because the context are the words. If you program something to the definition of each word,
Okay.
and are you going to do slang too? Because we could do slang because he
Well, they
tweets
would.
all
They-
the damn time.
It goes back to how much data is being, put into this machine
Compiled.
and compiled. Yeah, and like in order. So I mean, you could
but
say
how's
a
it going to
person
read
is
it
only
with no emotion? Exactly.
well, we have actually programmed robots that have exhibit at least the
Emotion?
representation.
To what we think.
Clay just trumped everybody again.
So if
Everybody give a round of applause for Clay.
hey, but okay. So what you consider emotion, I might not consider emotion. to me.
But I mean, you realize
to
that
be
emotion
honest,
isn't the only defining factor though in a human being.
You
I
gave
mean,
me
whales have
3
emotion.
words: Maxine, Waters, and Trump.
Okay.
You said that I was going to coordinate them in certain ways.
Okay,
All I
do.
got was that Trump, Waters, Maxine.
Okay, how about hate?
I don't want to go that route.
Hate speech.
It is.
Hate.
it is-
I hate you.
It is against the 3 laws of robotics that has been instilled upon me.
Oh, but I thought we were in a simulation. What if I wanted to simulate it to
Well, there's
hate?
still rules and stuff. I mean, again, it goes back to like.
There's rules.
Well, this you have to. Oh my god, you're taking this too literally. Think metaphorically. So again, everything is
All
made up
this
of
is
series.
literally.
It's not.
All
literal.
this is literally.
How is all this literal?
We're not in a simulation, dude. You're living live.
Okay.
okay.
I mean, again, this is a theory.
Oh, okay. You just validated
your
my point.
idea
Thank you.
of creationism
Yeah,
and
but what is-
God
what's
itself
your definition of
is
a
a
simulation?
theory.
Okay,
it's theory
yeah,
based on faith. That is your
So if
theory.
we're gonna
you
make a
saying
point-
you speaking in absolutes is not the way to go about it.
Okay, but
because
if you
you
say
don't
that-
know.
okay,
so
but-
you're saying you're living life. That's it. I mean,
What's funny? You're speaking in absolutes right now.
no, I'm telling you.
On a theory.
Yeah, these are the theories. This
On
is
a
how
theory.
this is how it could work.
So
You just. It's whatever.
So it's a theory. So if we're saying literally
Yeah.
everything is a simulation, then literally it should have emotions.
Yes.
Well, what do you mean by
Yes,
that?
that is absolutely correct.
If it is
Like
a
the
simulation.
people
Ex-
in the
well, it's
simulation?
all a theory, so I'm not speaking in absolutes.
I
It's
mean-
not proven.
It can't be proven.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, none of it can be proven until it's happened.
So quit labeling me, motherfucker.
I don't think that's what he's just trying to
He's
explain to
saying open
you
your
I'm,
mind.
the
I'm
nuances.
just saying to open your mind because you're the only one here with the closed mind about creation
I'm sorry
and everything
that-
like that.
Yeah.
Someone questioned you? Fuck.
It's all good. That's part of the simulation.
Otherwise, it'd be a fact.
This is where I refer back to our good friend Plato, who wrote about Socrates, and his greatest philosophy was, I know that I know nothing. And I think that's an important aspect for everybody that's watching this show, is that as much as we get heated and we get into debates, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Everyone has their own
Yeah.
right of how they express themselves. And we all don't know anything.
And even to say like, "Oh, I know this," it's like, what does that really mean? How
That's
do you
cute,
really
Troy.
know? Because like back in the day, like what was the most reliable source of information? It was hearsay. So like if you didn't personally experience it firsthand, how could you say that? Oh, I know. Like I could read it in a book and be like, well, I know this happened, blah blah blah. But I mean, I didn't acquire that information on my own. Someone could have written anything in that book, but because it's in a book, oh, is it right? You know, it's like on the internet.
What
Is
about-
everything on the internet true because it's on the internet? If everyone agrees on something, does that really make it true?
Maybe we should put this into
agree.
song. We should put this into song because it seems to be this weird concept. Everybody loves music, and if you listen to music, that it's you're talking the
Wait, we
same
have a song?
way. No, I'm just saying we can make this into
Oh,
a song.
I thought
Not
you had
everybody
something for
likes
us.
the same music.
Well, yeah, but there's still music, and
Make
so
it
all I'm
musical.
saying is in a more rhythmic way. Especially like, have you ever heard how Neil deGrasse Tyson speaks? That rhythm, it drives me fucking insane. But there's a rhythm to how we all
that
speak.
Showmanship.
Well, it's just the cadence
Yeah.
and the stars.
Well, it's a good way to convey information.
Yeah,
I mean,
precisely.
if you speak with a kind of rhythm, people are going to listen. If you speak all, disjointed and pause a whole bunch of times,
like
the
you
lose
lose
people's attention.
like the Mars attacks Martians. That's way too loud.
Wow, that was in my ears.
Sorry.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Mars
it's-
attacks.
It's a great movie.
Yeah,
It's a
the aliens are
fantastic-
fucking ugly as
One
hell.
of the greatest quotes or instances of Socrates is
Look like I'm kissing.
there was
Yeah.
there was it was slightly before he was put to death, and they were talking about him and how he went around and he always had his head up in the stars, and said that if he was about to trip over a well or some shit because his head's always in the stars, and that's
Instead of looking down on his phone,
right.
he would have
right.
had.
Instead of looking
Which is
down,
interesting. He was a stone cutter.
Instead of looking to where you're at and your situation around you and all that stuff, he always looked up into the stars because that sentience of wanting more knowledge. I think that's a beautiful thing. I always,
Yeah, he speculated that there was more than what we can see.
before
and
I opened
experience.
up my mind to certain possibilities, I always was set in my ways about the way that I thought, and I never gave credence to anything else. I used to tell people that they were fucking retarded for the aspects and the things they thought, and then whenever I opened my mind to certain possibilities, even if it wasn't correct, the idea itself is a beautiful concept to me, and it's kind of like art. The way that we are so sentient, we can imagine something with our mind, even if it's completely false. That the idea that we're able to picture something like that, it's amazing to me. So I think that's a
Well, you say open in your mind, but you question people that question the way you think on certain things, not everything. But like you said, I was speaking absolutes, but it's all a theory.
I agree.
So, but you say you opened your mind. You open your mind to the possibility of the way you think, but you don't open your mind to the way me questioning.
Well,
I don't
Sir-
believe that I ever said that you were wrong in anything that you were saying. I don't believe I ever
the
said
West
that.
has a
I said-
tendency to
I s-
speak in absolutes. We have this whole perception that everything can be broken down to like the most objective, like material thing, and that
But-
doesn't leave a lot of room
No, and I
for
agree.
expanding your mind and seeing things differently,
I'm
as you said, even if it's right or
Definitely not the
wrong.
left. But what I'm saying is that I speak in my opinion, and so whenever I clarify things, I say it in my opinion because it's what I think. And whenever I project an idea out there, I don't want to shoot anything that you have to say down. And if I came across that way, that wasn't my
No.
intent.
But you gotta accept critics, because now it's your job to persuade me to believe what you want me to believe. So therefore, I'm not speaking in absolutes. I'm just saying, hey, this is the way I think, and it's your job to persuade me.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I may have interpreted it differently.
Yeah, but
So-
that's just the way my mind works.
Yeah.
It's not speaking in absolutes. Like, I've been wrong many a times. Wrong last show, actually, to be honest. But at the same time, like, if you want me to believe what you believe, you have to get on my level playing field. So therefore, I'm gonna have questions. And yeah, I'm gonna speak in absolutes, but at the end of the day, it's still theory. No one can prove this.
Right.
So that's all I'm pointing out, is that it's not me just bashing you. It's just you need to clarify some things.
Okay.
Like, I just want things transparent, I guess you would say. But you can't, because it's not proven.
Right.
So, but I'm just trying to figure out. I'm trying to pick your mind.
Gotcha.
Is what most of my statements are.
Gotcha.
Because I got a lot of weird questions, dude.
Yeah.
It's never gonna stop.
I feel you.
Oh wow, that was amazing.
That breakthrough.
But dude,
I feel great.
That
Right,
breakthrough
but
right
you
there.
you gotta level with people. Like, if I want to make someone believe that that's green, I'm gonna have to validate that somehow.
I think the general rule of ideas is that you shouldn't lie to somebody and tell them and try to convince them of something that you're not too sure of in the first place. That's
Exactly.
where conversation starts. It's no longer dictation. It's a shared accountability, a shared amount of ideas that are going through back and forth. When you start talking about things and you're dictating it in a way that says this is the absolute truth, that's a slippery slope, because I do agree. I don't think anything's absolute. Anything that I've learned.
Also,
Go ahead.
also, if you make someone feel stupid, they're going to stop listening.
True.
100%.
True. Absolutely. The one thing I would really like to get across is that what I've noticed, this is again just my personal opinion, my personal observation, the more and more I start trying to figure out the universe, the more I start figuring out the world around me, it's constantly changing. And it's changing in at rapid pace. And I'm not just talking about technology and how we communicate nowadays. I'm talking about the microscopic things that once were something that are no longer that. And what that shows me is that there is no such thing as absolute, that everything's in this kind of fluctuation.
Actually, I think
there's no such thing
communication
as-
might be the biggest. look at the media now. Look how it's changing the entire fucking world.
Right.
I mean, that's
the shadows
that's about
on
to
the
be
wall,
the
dude.
biggest overthrow of
I like
every
that.
single thing.
The shadows on the wall. One last question before we sign off, and I want to ask each and every one of you.
Oh, it's already over.
Yeah, man.
Man, I feel like we could actually go on with this.
You want to?
I think we should try.
Okay,
I mean,
all
there's
right.
a lot to go over. We
Okay.
can revisit the metaphor on the allegory, because again, like the shadows on the wall thing, what you see again, like you can tell yourself, oh, I know what this is, and like the person next to you can say the same thing. But again, you both really don't know until you can sit down, break it down, and be like, I mean, because again, your perception is affected by your language.
Are you just singing Clay out, or you
Oh,
talking
in
to
general,
everybody?
no, everyone. I'm just looking at Clay because
I
he's
just
on my
felt,
lips.
holy shit, like,
No,
goddamn,
no,
dude.
or either
No,
that-
you're-
what if one gets depressed
But
quicker
that's what I mean.
than the
So
other?
if no one's willing to listen to each other, you'll never reach that consensus and actually find whatever truth that may be.
This is the true discourse we're going through right now in the country, and the bullshit's got to stop. And I think the best way that we could get to
Thank
that
you,
path
Roger.
is, listen to everybody else. Just because you have that opinion, share your opinion when someone wants you to.
Yeah.
I call it unsolicited information. I don't need to have somebody tell me something that I didn't ask for in the first place.
Right.
Especially when I got earphones on all the time when I go outside in public. That's not a real tip-off. I want to talk to people. But yet, someone always thinks that's a perfect opportunity.
It's good to get into that state where you're flexible and hear people out. Even if you don't agree with them, it's still good to kind of learn where they're coming from. Because as you mentioned before, if you're going to try and convince somebody, you have to know their side. So I mean,
Or at least listen
So
to
like,
them.
if you're a Republican, you need to know the liberal argument. If you really want to have a real discussion about it, not just, oh, I fucking hate you people, whatever, blah blah blah. I think you're stupid.
and
Like,
if you're talking to a
yeah.
homosexual, you better suck 2 dicks at least.
Okay.
All right.
That's not true.
I
mean, wow.
I don't think you need to go that far into their.
No, I mean everyone experiences oral sex, so I think on that one you don't necessarily have to actually suck a dick to understand.
Maybe you do.
Well, maybe.
I mean,
I disagree.
In my opinion,
in absolutes, motherfucker. I did not suck that dick.
my thing is, you try ice cream, you don't try dick. So
What if it's dick flavored ice cream?
then I'm
Would
not
you eat
eating
dick
it.
flavored ice cream?
No,
What about ass flavored ice cream?
no.
I want to get back to a serious question for
Pussy
you,
flavored ice
for
cream?
you gentlemen.
Okay, go on.
If we're talking about the allegory of the cave
Yeah.
and simulations, I want to go around the table and I want to ask a really serious, important
Okay.
question. Do you think you are the programmer of your own life? Stu, we're going to start with you.
I feel like, in that sense, I'm a mini creator. I feel like because I'm able to construct things with my hands or with my idea of programming, I believe that I have the capability of mini creation. Just like when you develop a game or you develop anything, a construction, any type of project that you do, I believe that in that instance, I'm a mini creator. So
Clay?
Yes, I'm in control of my own destiny. I believe whatever I do, sky's the limit. I mean, I don't think I'm in a simulation at all. But I do believe that we are kind of like a science project because, I mean, that's how you make science projects. You can grow your own bacteria and stuff like that. We can literally do that. But as far as being in a simulator, no, I believe I'm in control of my own life.
Anthony.
I do think I am my own architect. I am my own agent. If I want something to happen, it's well within my ability to make it happen. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Doesn't mean I know necessarily how to do it, but the potential is there. It can be done. And I'm also capable of changing my own behaviors. And I think people take the whole, let me phrase it this way. So if in the Bible, how it says God is everything, God is everywhere. Well, maybe people, again, they take that too fucking literally. We are, in essence, God. We create what we want to see, what we want to experience. We also attract, again, those things. We're also capable of destruction as well. We have this, our mind, we don't have an instruction manual for it, and it's capable of doing a lot of crazy shit, and it's evident because we see those, few people doing it. And sorry, we were
No. Yeah, I'm gonna ask him. Real quick.
Go on. No, go ahead.
You got the mic right. Mike, what do you think? Are you?
I don't think
You don't
that we're in control of that.
Interesting.
I take a more religious approach to that.
I like that. Go ahead.
Let's hear it out.
I do feel, and it's kind of interesting, in what you just said, with what the Bible says and everything like that. In theory, once again, to believe in God is kind of to believe in the simulation.
In a way, yeah.
In a way,
I think one of the hardest things that everyone goes through is, what if I'm wrong?
yeah.
You know, what if I put all my eggs in this basket and it was wrong?
Right.
But you have the choice of free
Put all your
will.
lotion in the basket.
You do, and which I understand, you do have the choice of free will, but that doesn't mean that you weren't
I guess
persuaded.
Well, yeah,
I'm going to use the word persuaded
And I-
because I think you can be persuaded based on your beliefs
I agree with that. And
and the variables that have been presented to you.
I gotta-
That's
I got to put this up again. That's
But
great.
I think there's an awareness, though.
Troy says, if that's the question, then there's a distinct possibility that we're all really in straitjackets staring at a white wall in an asylum thinking we're talk show hosts.
So the cave.
That
You
is
know,
a
it all goes back to the
beautiful-
cave.
You know, whenever we first started and we had no viewership, we thought that about ourselves, that we were fucking just crazy talking to the abyss and some radio waves sending it.
Well, hey,
So-
here's my question. What would be the difference?
Well, actually, let's go to you. What is your response to the question?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, never asked me, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I believe. I believe that we are all part of the whole, and I think everybody has degrees of remembering or understanding or knowing who they truly are. You know, like how you have the liar of everything as far as one's extreme on one side, one's extreme on the other. I believe we are all architects and creators ourselves. I also believe that we're very special in how we've been designed, if you will. Like there's a specialty to Anthony Carnes, there's a specialty to Stuart and to Mike and to Clay and to myself. I mean, we're all unique as well. And that's what makes it really interesting. And so I think we're all part of that same stuff. And the reason why we can't understand or agree with somebody else is just because we're not made of that same idea, that component. So it doesn't make it wrong or right. It's just simply this is who our perspective is.
It's like,
So,
yeah. Go ahead.
Quick. So, you do or you do not believe that you are in control?
I do.
You do believe
I
you
do.
are in control?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that you as an individual are. I think once you start surrounding yourself with other individuals, it becomes more of a shared.
I would like to add,
creation.
though, because he mentioned about like those influences or how you're persuaded, and I think for the most part, on average, our society's conditioned most of us to run on autopilot. So, like again, the capability of being your own architect is there. It's just that we kind of forgot how to be aware of what's going on internally. Like some people just suck at that. Like they don't know why. Oh, this shit happens to me, this and that. It's like, well,
Right.
you behave in a certain way, and if you were more aware of how you yourself worked or processed these things, you would have a better chance of exerting control over your life.
Yeah.
So, like you were
So you can ignore that persuasion if you're attuned to it, if you're aware of what's going on. And
So like what you were saying was you believe in like a collective consciousness. Are you
Yes.
saying there's like a pool of collective consciousness that you can pull emotions from, or you can pull whatever you need from that, but everybody's connected in that way, and
That's
so
exactly
they all
what I'm
just
saying.
interact.
That's exactly what I'm
based
saying.
on that connectivity.
Yeah, I think
it's like one giant
Interesting.
neural hub.
yeah, precisely.
interesting.
And the more people you get around or the more collective you get. That's why they always say be very careful who you surround yourself
Yeah,
with.
you can amplify it one way or
Exactly.
the other.
How many times have you been in a relationship and all of a sudden you just feel that
Drained
empathy or you
or
feel that
yeah.
person, what's going on? And it goes back to even animals in nature, Clay. I'm sure you're familiar with this. The deer, scientists used to think that the deer only traveled based on what the alpha male was going to dictate, but that's not true. They realized when they started looking at it that they're all taking a vote. And once it hits that 100th monkey, once it hits that 51st percentile,
Okay.
they automatically go there.
Actually, usually the males travel together and the females travel together when it's not in rut season. Then when rut hits, then it's no holds barred.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. But how many times have you changed your mind? How many times have you thrown an idea out there? You had no followers, and you're like, well, maybe I need to rethink this.
That's a good point.
Because you have to have followers, otherwise you're just alone and you're the free thinker, and then everybody's like, no, you're crazy.
There's nothing wrong with being a free thinker. One of my favorite stories comes from a guy. This is in ancient Greece. So he was a free thinker, and he used to be the crazy guy in town. He'd shit on himself. He'd shit in boxes. He'd be in the town square.
This is an actual story.
Yeah, just pretty much Dionysus is his name, and he pretty much just wanted to do whatever he wanted. And the funny part was they all said, "Everyone leave him alone. Everyone just kind of stay away from him." And so he knew that, so he did whatever the fuck he wanted to do. And at one point, he actually hopped over the fence and the emperor's fence, and he was sunbathing in the emperor's pool. So all of a sudden, he's just enjoying the sun, and this big luminous shadow comes over him, and he goes, "I'm Emperor so-and-so. Is there anything I can do for you?" And he says, "Yeah, you can get out of my sun."
Get the fuck out of my son. Yeah.
Well, see, that's the price you pay for being an individual. You get alienated from the herd.
Sure.
But when you live in
there's a
society,
balance.
I think that you have a responsibility, and that whenever you take on the mantle of using somebody else's assets and equipment and stuff, that to me, that's breaking,
Freeloading?
that's breaking a fucking barrier. So I feel
I
like
agree.
I feel like
Yeah, that's a disturbance.
I understand the idea of free thinking and wanting to be free in that essence, but you also have to understand whenever you do something,
It needs harmony.
It's a causation. So
Absolutely.
if there's an action that happens, there's going to be an opposite or equal
I
reaction.
think people would get along with that understanding a lot better if they took responsibility for their actions.
Yeah, responsibility is a huge thing.
Because we have the freedom to do whatever we want to do. We have the freedom. That's what free will
but it doesn't
is.
mean that
But
there won't be repercussions or like you
There's
mentioned,
consequences for every action,
yeah.
good or bad.
You just brought up a good question. So say that again, what you just said.
The idea that if there's an action, there's an opposite or equal reaction.
But that wouldn't happen in a simulator. It would change constantly.
No, it could.
That's not-
Again, that
that's
goes
not-
back to the rules of the simulator.
No,
We don't-
physics.
we don't- we
It's a
don't-
one-sided simulator.
We don't know what the rules of the simulator are.
The
Well, right.
simulator is the change, right?
We don't know.
It,
We're speculating.
It's
We have no idea.
It's a speculation that the simulation that we live in, the theory is that everything's there already. So everything that we're feeling, emotions, everything like that, that is part of the
Yeah, it's all
simulation.
part of the program.
So the idea of change is also part of the simulation. So anything that you can perceive can happen.
So even that, the theory of Newton's law
Right.
could change.
Theoretically,
yeah.
Theoretically, yes.
they've been proving Einstein. Einstein E equals MC squared.
I'm not
Everyone
going you wrong.
thought-
I'm just
No.
throwing wrenches into.
No,
Yeah,
I understand. I understand
and
where
that's the
where you're
beauty
coming
about
from.
it is that when you start finding these things that you thought were absolutes, that oh my God, there's something else to it. This is where innovation comes into play. This is where revolutionary ideas come into play. If you just keep believing this little, again, the cave that's been painted for all of us, we're never going to be able to step out of our own understanding of who we are and be able to exceed greatness and see really what is out there.
I feel like the idea of a reaction requires a opposite or equal reaction. I think that saves itself as to opposed to an idea of change, because if something is opposite, the reaction is going to show. If the opposite, if the action is equal, then that change already occurred.
And obviously,
or
it doesn't
shows the
apply
change
on the moon because you wouldn't have that.
as far as
Well, I mean, I guess you would. I guess you would.
as far as what.
Because if something
Yeah, what do you
hit you,
mean?
you would. Well, I don't know it to that degree because we deal with gravity here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Which is
there's
a lot of new-
Well,
Well,
again,
there's
so
gravity.
like on the moon, there's different physical rules as opposed to
But
Earth.
if something
Gravity.
small hits you, you would still. I think it'd be. Isn't it different?
Well, sure. I mean, let me ask you a question. You know the moon Europa on Jupiter, right?
I don't know the name.
Isn't that
but-
actually? It could be potentially habitable,
Well, the idea is that we don't know if it's habitable or inhabitable.
but it's got water and.
But
weather.
the question is, what is that gravitational force, and what are all the laws of physics that apply to that?
What
concept?
theories would we come up over there?
Precisely.
Yeah.
You know, we've come up with our laws and physics of everything that works here.
Right.
Now, Einstein is credited because he looked out in the universe and he figured out things that nobody could have, not even with telescopes. He was using his own mind and looking at things going, well, I wonder if it works out there like just it does in space and what it does here. That's why it's called space-time. So we have these new ideas and these new insights to when we start finding planets. I mean, for Mars, for example, Mars does not have the same 365 days we do as a year. I think
Exactly.
It's, you know, things change. So we don't really understand these structures and laws, if you will. So that's what we're here to do. This is what we're figuring out.
That's what I was getting on to Stu with. Like, I'm not bashing you in any way or form, but I know you're so passionate about this. Like, I wanted you to make a believer out of me, like, because I know you like to expand your mind like that. But I'm probably one of the most closed-minded people that you'll ever meet. So I wanted you to persuade me.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, and I mean, I'm not trying to convince anybody.
Because you have a lot of valid points.
I mean, you know, I'm not even completely 100% subscribed to the idea.
Exactly.
So I just find it very fascinating. I find it interesting. I've always found religion, anything having to do with our creation as a whole, whether it be the Big Bang Theory, anything to that spectrum, I've always found fascinating. So I'll always give it some credence. I'll always give it a platform to breathe. Just
Well, and I
like-
didn't want you to think I was attacking you. I just,
I don't think anyone thought you were doing
Stu,
that.
can you read that?
why do Michael and Stu look like they're holding hands under
we
the
are.
desk?
no, they are.
Don't be jealous, babe. Don't be jealous. This is a bromance that is weird. He was here long before you.
Can I give a shout out?
Yeah.
I like to give a shout out to Roger Connectiony. He actually owns the Margarita Hut to go in Little Elm.
nice.
Yeah, it's badass.
Right on.
Everybody should go there.
Thanks for watching.
I also have to give a shout out. I'm playing in a Player Unknown Battlegrounds tournament with my buddy Eric. I don't know if he's in the chat, but he's carrying me through this tournament. We're 6th place right now. We played 4 games. We have 8 to go, and we're 6th place out of 80 teams. So it's pretty big deal. And there's cash prize and stuff. So we're looking to take it home, and I'm gonna ride his back the whole way.
Nice.
So.
Well, I'm just gonna shout out to the rest of everyone watching. Thank you for watching. Keep watching. I don't think anyone I know personally watches this, so I. Hello,
All right,
everybody.
Robert, we get it. Fuck.
I'm going to make a shout out to life in the universe.
Fish sandwiches.
We might not be
Oh.
able to figure it out right now,
Didn't
but
you sell
what
2
if
fish specials?
I did? No, I did not.
Whoever's over the simulator, please make me rich.
Yeah,
not how
I
the
like
game
to
was meant to be
believe that this little stupid pirate ship podcast and the technology that we're using right now can still be transferred out, and maybe there's a higher evolved species that really digs what we're doing. So, shout out to y'all, motherfuckers! Please don't kill us all.
Yeah,
No problem, Roger.
SWAT